The Mass readings for today, they really present us with a choice that is absolutely central to our spiritual lives. It all kind of boils down to this one powerful idea. God is constantly visiting us, and we have to decide, are our hearts going to be open or are they going to be closed to Him? Okay, let's dive into this.
Wow, these are some of the most heartbreaking words in the entire gospel. This is Jesus, and he's weeping as he says this over Jerusalem. It's not out of anger, you see, but this profound sorrow. He sees a people he loves missing the single most important moment in their entire history. And this lament, this tragedy of a missed opportunity, really sets the stage for everything we're going to unpack today. So the scriptures, they lay out two fundamentally different ways to live. It's a really stark contrast between two different responses to God's call. It's a choice between this passionate fidelity on one hand and a tragic spiritual blindness on the other. I mean, just look at the contrast here. On one side, you've got Mattathias from our first reading. He sees God's covenant being threatened, and his response is pure fire, this powerful zeal to defend his faith. But then on the other side, you have Jerusalem in the gospel. God himself, literally God, is walking their streets, and yet they're indifferent. Their hearts are hardened, and that leads directly to the sorrow that Christ feels for them. So what's the core difference here? It's really a choice between two paths. You've got the path of fidelity, which is marked by courage, zeal, and just an active awareness of God's presence. And then you've got the path of blindness. That's defined by spiritual complacency, indifference, and even resistance to grace. Honestly, our entire salvation history shows that everything can turn on this single choice. Do we accept or do we reject God's visitation? Well, this leads us to a really critical question. What happens when we choose that path of blindness? What are the real consequences? And why is missing an opportunity for grace considered such a tragedy? The readings give us three profound realities we just have to grasp. First, real faithfulness. It's always going to cost you something. It's going to interrupt your comfort. It isn't easy or convenient. I mean, Mattathias had to abandon his whole life for his convictions. Second, God is looking for an authentic heart, not just empty rituals. He wants a real relationship, not just people going through the motions. And finally, and this is the key, divine appointments can be missed. Grace is an invitation, it's not an obligation. But remember, Jesus' tears aren't a threat of punishment. No, they're an expression of a love that desperately wants us to turn back to Him. This is such a powerful way to picture the urgency here. Think of God's grace like a high-speed train arriving at the station. It offers life, transport, everything you could possibly need. But if you're too distracted, too complacent, maybe just too comfortable to even look up and see the opportunity, well, that train is going to leave the station and you'll have missed your visitation entirely. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is just some ancient story about warriors and cities, but this choice, it's just as real for us today. Let's look at a more modern example of someone who faced this exact same spiritual crossroads.
Meet Saint Raphael Kalinowski. Just like Mattathias, he was faced with a choice: compromise his faith for an easier life, or accept great suffering for the sake of fidelity. And guess what? He chose fidelity.
And that choice, it cost him dearly. 10 years of forced labor in the brutal cold of Siberia. But here's the incredible part. Even in all that hardship, he didn't see himself as abandoned. No way. Instead, he found God's visitation right there, in the middle of all that suffering. He did it through intense interior prayer and just being generous in serving his fellow prisoners. He's proof that God visits us everywhere, if we just have the eyes to see. So this brings it all back home, to us. How do we avoid the tragedy of Jerusalem? How do we cultivate the kind of fidelity that Mattathias and St. Raphael had in our own lives? How do we make sure we don't miss our own time of visitation?
The most consistent and powerful visitation we have is the Liturgy, especially the Eucharist. The Catechism calls it the sum and summary of our faith, for a very good reason. Every single Mass is a moment where Christ visits His people. It's a scheduled appointment with grace.
So here are three simple, super practical ways to turn Mass into a true encounter. First, at the offertory, consciously offer your will to God. Just ask for the courage to be faithful. Second, at the consecration, don't just watch. Try to see the heart of Jesus being poured out for you. And finally, when you receive communion, explicitly ask for the grace to recognize your personal time of visitation in the week ahead.
And it doesn't stop at Mass, right? The challenge for today is to make one concrete act of fidelity. What's one area where you've been kind of delaying your conversion? Maybe it's confessing a sin you've been putting off.
Maybe it's just choosing 5 minutes of silent prayer over scrolling on your phone. Or maybe, just maybe, it's finally making that call to reconcile with someone. You got to remember, small, sincere steps attract immense grace.
And so, here we are, full circle. God is visiting. That train of grace we talked about, it's pulling into your station right now, in this very moment. The only question left is, are you going to get on board?